Well, it could be one of the most emotional issues looming on Capitol Hill right now. Defense Secretary Robert Gates discussing lifting the ban on gays openly serving in the military. Our next two guests are lawmakers, but what really fascinates us is their perspective as combat veterans. Representative Duncan Hunter is a former Marine who served 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. He'd like to see this policy stand as is. Eric Massa is a Naval Academy graduate and retired Navy commander. He thinks don't ask, don't tell should go away. He served during several global conflicts and was even the special assistant to the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Gentlemen, good to see you both.
Hey, good to be with you.
Congressman Hunter, let's start with you. When you were in military, and I know you have plenty of combat experience, you were even in the fight right there in Fallujah, Iraq. When you were active, did anyone come out to you?
No, I didn't have any awareness of any homosexuals or transgenders in my units or any other units for that matter. And this, I was in a combat unit, artillery and infantry. There were no women in it, and we didn't have any folks coming out saying that they were homosexuals. But this is interesting that we're having this debate right now. They're holding an hour debate in the Senate in the Armed Services Committee on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They have not dedicated a full hearing to roadside bombs, the #1 killer of Marines and soldiers in our military over there. So we aren't focusing on how to win the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. We're going to focus on changing social policy with our all-volunteer military in the midst of 2 wars.
And that's
the wrong time for this debate, I think.
Well, wrong time for the debate, but it's going on, and it's obviously been a very hot-button issue, as it is with you. You said that you never knew of anybody that was gay with whom you served. What if someone would have come up to you and come out to you? At that point, would that have changed how you went into battle? Will that have changed how you fought alongside that individual? Seriously, if you were in the heat of it, right there in a firefight in Fallujah, and somehow at some point you discovered that earlier in the morning or later in the day, would you look at that warrior differently at that moment in the heat of battle?
Yeah, probably that would have changed things for me. I mean, this is
why would it have changed things for you?
Well, the interesting thing is too, this isn't about what I feel about homosexuals in the military or homosexuals at all for that matter. This is about law. This is about law in the United States, and
sure.
right now that the law exists that we don't have open homosexuality in the military. This isn't about what I think about in the battle.
No, it is. It is what you served in the military. You're also a member of Congress. You make huge decisions. You're going to be involved with this. It's a decision that's being talked about right now on the Hill. This could change the face of life for gays in the military. And so it is a very important discussion to have. Is it more important than another discussion? I mean, that's, I think, left to everybody's opinion. But I want to continue with you. But Congressman Massa, let me ask you. What about you? Did anybody ever come out to you in the military? Did you serve with any gays in the military?
Well, first off, I think your listeners should understand that Congressman Hunter is a highly decorated combat veteran. I served for 24 years in the military, and my record does not stack up against his many months overseas. But he and I both come from an ethos where honesty and integrity are core values of uniformed military personnel. And to require men and women to serve under a lie where disingenuousness and dishonesty has to be the call of the day is simply wrong. For those to say that this impacts combat effectiveness, I ask them to look no farther than our close allies like Israel. Now, no one is going to say that the Israeli army is not combat tested or battle scarred, and yet in that army, which reflects a government and a people of deep cultural and religious beliefs, gays openly serve, as now in England, where first it was tested and found to have no impact whatsoever on combat readiness. And yet, in those 2 services, should those members execute exchange duty with our armed forces, because of our policies, they cannot. I know there's common ground here. I know Duncan, and I've known him since before he joined the Marine Corps. And he and I have absolute beliefs in honesty and integrity in combat units. This won't have an impact on combat readiness. We've seen that in our allies. And gays have been serving in the military for as long as we've had a military. In fact, any commander who doesn't understand who is, or in fact, who isn't in their unit, is probably kind of disconnected from reality, because I can tell you this, the troops all know And by some recent polling, 60 to 70% don't care. This is not a military issue. It is a political issue. And therefore, it is correct that it's being dealt with where it is amongst the dozens of hearings that we have on military equipment, roadside bombs, tactics, and strategy.
And so, Congressman Duncan, with that in mind, that ethos that your fellow congressman mentioned, you know, being gay, does that make you a weaker warrior?
No, but it takes away from the cohesiveness and the unity of that unit. It takes away the comfort and the ability for those men and women to feel comfortable in extremely close quarters, showering, foxholes, barracks, living together. We don't let men and women live together in the military, so why would you let you know, different homosexual men live together too? And I think Eric's point is
well, let me ask you this.
Reinforces this. He says that this is not a military issue. It's a political issue. It is a political issue that should not be forced on the military without the military wanting it. This is not for different ideological groups to decide. This is for the military to decide.
You know, and you mentioned this.
If I could for just a moment,
Congressman Massa, let me throw in as Congressman Hunter mentions this cohesive military. You know, General John Shalikashvili came forward, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he actually wrote in a statement last week: "As a nation built on the principle of equality, we should recognize and welcome change that will build a stronger, more cohesive military." As you just mentioned, Congressman Hunter, it's time to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Congressman Massa, I mean, you mentioned the impact worldwide in military. I mean, is there any proof that if you come out and say, I'm gay, whether you're special forces or just private first class, is that really going to tear up a cohesive military?
I'm far more interested that military members can shoot, fly, and sail straight than as to whether or not they are straight. And I'm joined by former Admiral Joe Sestak, member of Congress, and former Sergeant Major Tim Waltz, member of Congress, and a combat Iraq veteran who's taken a lead on this, also a member of Congress, Pat Murphy. We and many others, and the vast majority of Americans, believe that it is time to end this incredibly irresponsible, incredibly expensive, hundreds of millions of dollars, 13,000 members of the armed forces ejected, which, by the way, means that someone has to take their place and serve even longer tours overseas in hostile environments. I believe very strongly it's time to end this policy.
Final thought, Congressman Hunter, we got to go.
Yeah, it's 0.5% of all people that have been discharged in the last 9 years. 0.5% of them have been discharged because they were homosexual. This is not a readiness issue. This is not an impact issue. It's not hurting the military that we're discharging homosexuals. We need to win the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, not talk about pushing social ideology and experimenting with the military while we're in these two conflicts.
Representative Duncan Hunter and Representative Eric Massa, great discussion. I thought it, just the fact that you both have served, I thought added a lot to this debate and the power of the debate.
Well, just for the record, I think Duncan owes me a beer when we get back to Washington.
Okay, here we go. Beer Summit Part 2, and we will talk about homosexuality in the military. I hope I can be a part of that. Gentlemen, appreciate it. All right, that brings us to today's blog question. We did